Hello and welcome to the Left Wing Podcast. Will Slattery here with you, and it feels like Ireland's autumn campaign is finally up and running. The Springboks are in town this Saturday for a grudge match, and Ireland are going into that game off the back of a very impressive win over Australia on Saturday night. The 46 points to 19 victory is Ireland's largest ever over the Wallabies, and there were plenty of positives. The handling was crisp again, the rucking was good, the line out, which had come in for some scrutiny, was operating at 100%. So all in all, lots of reasons to be positive ahead of the South African game on Saturday. I'm delighted to be joined in studio by Luke Fitzgerald and Rúaidhrí O'Connor for tonight's chat. And Rod, there's so many things I want to get to from Saturday's game, and obviously as we look ahead to the South Africa match, but I don't know, I felt like the good vibes started with Ireland's win over Portugal in the football, obviously leading into Hungary yesterday as well, but it seems like the Ireland team did maybe take a little bit of positivity going into Saturday.
I think there was a The Irish players watched the game on Thursday, the Portugal game in their team room, and Doris came into the captain's run on Friday buzzing on the back of it. And I would say Andy Farrell the next morning was like, this is what you can do. Like, this, look at the place, it's hopping. It hasn't been like that for a while for you guys, but if you deliver for this crowd, these people will get behind you. And I do think that there was a little bit. Now, I'm not saying it was the reason they executed so well, but they hadn't looked like they were enjoying. It did seem like their theme last week was appreciate what you have. Stop getting down on the stuff, on the mistakes and stuff. Appreciate the fact that you're representing Ireland at home. Own it. Enjoy it. You know, relish the fact. You know, how many opportunities do you get to play for Ireland in a full Aviva Stadium at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night against a team like Australia? And it did seem like I think Farrell got a lot of stuff right last week, and that's part of what he did. I think even just the good vibes of the team. I know Josh van der Fleer, Gary Ringrose, and a couple of the other unused players who missed out were at the stadium. I know Joe McCarthy was there as well. So there was a bit of good vibes kind of carrying over from the football, but it definitely looked like a happier camp, a much more positive Ireland experience in a green jersey on Saturday night for those players. We know there's a bigger game coming down the track this week, a much harder test, but for them to score 6 tries at home and for the stuff to work for them, hadn't really been clicking for them for the last couple of weeks, or even before that, and that's important for them to experience that again, just to start feeling good about being an Irish team again, not getting hammered in the media afterwards for kind of, even though they beat Japan, it was fairly critical afterwards, and right, like I don't think they should have been let off the hook for it, but all that stuff is good for them, and look, there's a big test coming this week, but that was a good night at the office on Saturday night.
Can I tie in on that one a little bit, because I felt like, and we obviously talked a little bit off air, so it sounds like we're kind of a similar opinion, but I actually felt slightly the other way about how he prepped the team, just from listening to him a little bit. So we talked about the selections, maybe being like kind of lighting a bit of a fire in there, and I felt like he may well have done both, as in he may well have kind of been like, appreciate where you have all that kind of stuff, enjoy yourself, enjoy this like once in a lifetime, not once, but like, this opportunity that's in front of you. But I felt he kind of got into a few people last week. We'll talk about the selections later on, but even a little bit about Hansen on the boots. I feel like Farrell was on edge this week. And I actually thought that it wasn't really a things coming off type week. There was a few things that did, like, Sam Prendergast getting tackled. Like, it was a poor decision. He could have put Lowe in under the sticks, I think, if he doesn't go for the cross. The crossfield kick for Hansen's try. He got a bit lucky because he got hit as he was kicking it and still managed to get it out there. But I felt like it was a week for basics. And I thought they got the line out right, and Australia didn't, and that was a key facet of the game. Really, if you think about how we turned over 2 or 3. God, there was a critical period towards the end of the second half. Do you remember they were putting pressure on us? And I actually thought we really managed that very poorly, like lots of poor penalties and stuff like that. But the line out was critical because we turned over some brilliant ones. I mean, Baird in there, just unbelievable. He's just so springy in there. Reminds us of kind of a Peter O'Mahony, but they obviously prepped really hard and chose their times to compete really well. But the ruck was so different because Australia have some serious, they're very, very good at competing on the ground. That was really good. I thought the ball handling, there was a few sloppy bits, but they fix the errors quickly, so if Prendergast knows he's getting hit, and there's a lovely little short pop close to the line for one of the tries off a poor enough pass at the back, but it kind of happened a lot during the game, and I actually thought they tidied those things up really well. They didn't kind of compound errors and things like that, so I thought that he probably combined a little bit. I think it's probably worth saying it just because it wasn't all happy camps last week. I don't think. I feel like he got into them a bit, and there was a refocus on the basics, and I'd say Paul O'Connell really delivered at the line out. because he was getting a lot of criticism. So it was great to see both of those. No, sir, we all said like it needs to improve. I'm sure he would have known that himself. So they were key parts in the game for me. And I also thought, we'll cover, I'm sure, but the kicking was so much better. I mean, Prendergast got all the highlight. Prendergast and Crowley, in fairness, got his plaudits too. He was really good when he came on. I think the two of them were really good. But I thought Gibson Park, he was the key guy. He was unbelievable how he directed the team around. And some of the kicking was just outstanding. It was otherworldly. So yeah, can't wait to discuss more of it, you know. And there was a combination, I think, of a lot of factors, some complexity, but also real focus on the basics.
Yeah, I thought the handling was a lot better. It was the best we'd seen from it in a while. Even in the opening 2-3 minutes, it actually ended with Australia counter-rucking well and getting a turnover. But there was just good variety. There was some interplay between the forwards, which is what we've been asking for as well. That kind of handling that the forwards, when Ireland are really humming, are doing well. There was like an inside ball, I think, to Tyke Byrne, that he kind of made a half break. And Sam Prendergast, mixed it up well with like a cross kick to Tommy O'Brien, and that created some inroads into the 22. That kind of set the tone, even though they didn't score. And then I think they did, like, the two early Mack Hansen tries. I know one came from like a kind of a bouncing ball that Sam Prendergast flicked on, but the second one in particular, the handling was really good. Like Robbie Henshaw had a nice role in the build up to that try too. It just kind of showed me that they were kind of at their best, because that's what I associate with Ireland at their best, and that's what gave me the kind of a good bit of encouragement early on, in particular, that they were kind of clued in. Because when if Ireland don't have like the power of South Africa, what they need to be good at is like their basics, as Luke says, and they were really good at the basics, in particular in that first like 15-20 minutes, when ultimately putting 14 points on the board there makes it very hard for Australia to come back from.
Yeah, I do think they were happy with the second half against Japan, but Farrell was really annoyed, and you're right, he was hard on them selection wise. He was hard on them in meetings, I think, during the week. I think he drew a line and said, "This is not us," and he challenged them to show what they were about. And I think by the time they got to Thursday, Friday, started building them back up and trying to get the framing it as appreciate what you've got here and enjoy it. But I think whatever the alchemy of what he did came out in the performance, and they just looked far. They were, think of the language he used last week. They played within themselves. They suppressed themselves. None of that was there. He'd managed to get them to a place where they looked in flow, and as a result, their handling was much better. The first lineup goes to hand. Like they win all of their lineouts. Then one of them was
the second one was not good.
One Paddy McCarthy rescued.
Yeah, it counts as 100%. That's why statistics can be misleading sometimes. Because
but they got the ball back.
100% line out.
No, but they got like Australia.
It was very good. Jack.
Like Australia didn't help themselves. They didn't pick Nick Frost, their best line out forward in the second row, and like he did a number on the lines in one of the Lions games, and they left him out. So you had a back row and they're. I don't rate Jeremy Williams as highly as I do Frost. So that played into Ireland's hands, and they kind of gave Ireland the front. But even the one where Australia got up and contested, they managed to get it back. And sometimes it's about just finding a way. I thought Hansen coming in at fullback, like I like Jamie Osborne as a player. I rate him very, very highly. But to me, he's a midfielder, and I think given the age profile of Ireland's midfield, it's time to just get him into the midfield mix and get him challenging Henshaw, Aki, and Ringrose and McCluskey for those spots, because I think he can do a job at fullback. But when you see Mack Hansen operating as that second pair of eyes behind Sam Prendergast or Jack Crowley, it just opens up the game for Ireland. They look like a better team when they have a creative force in the backfield like that. Just watching his white scrum cap choose his moments to come in. At times, whenever midfield ruck, he'd go right, Prendergast go left. They've got a two-sided attack option. Australia don't know what to do. Like, I know his two tries were walk-ins, but he also chose very, very good lines off the shoulder. He was perceptive enough to pick the ball up and go. He won most of his aerial battles. I know he spilled one goal, so did Lowe. Things that they can't do this week against South Africa. But I do think that selection opened up something for Ireland. And I'm not saying he's going to get the jersey off Hugo Keenan when he's fit, but he's right in the mix, and it allows you to pick O'Brien, who's in great form as well, and suddenly you've got a lovely blend in that back three. Yeah,
like it's a completely different option, it's a fairly different option to what Hugo Keenan brings, and they're both very good. And you don't think so?
No, well, I think Keenan opens the pitch up for you too.
I don't think he's got the vision. I don't think he's got the same vision as Hansen.
Yeah, but I think he's more relentless and mistake free, and they're both actually excellent defenders. I think there's no conversation anymore. Obviously, there was a lot of conversation when Hansen comes on the scene on the wing, and it's definitely a more difficult place to defend than fullback really as well. But still, I think he's closed up that debate. I think he's really strong there now. So, but I do think I still think Keane's slightly better there for me. And I think where it actually might open up actually a conversation is probably on Lowe's wing. More so than
that was going to be my question. If this weekend, if Keenan, Lowe, Hansen and Tommy O'Brien were all fit, who would be starting for you? Because for me, O'Brien has to start. I think he's playing great rugby.
Yeah, he was really unlucky. There was a one bit of play.
If it's O'Brien +2, I'm like, I wouldn't get rid of him anyway. So
yeah, he made one mistake himself, O'Brien. That was that short side one with Casey towards the end of the game. That was a bad. He kind of overran him, but he still should have caught that one. He was kind of awake.
He got run over by Pollard for the third try as well. Because I know we're going to talk about Sam Prendergast one-on-one tackling later on, but like we should flag those as well. So other players did make defensive errors. O'Brien is a great defender. It can happen.
Not the same.
No, I agree. I think if we're going to be, I think people really hone in whenever.
You're preempting the criticism we haven't yet made.
I know it's coming though. I don't care which of the three are picked. What I like is now that there's options, and that James Lowe now goes. If Hugo comes back, I'm at risk, so I need to go to another level. That Tommy O'Brien has put heat under Hansen for that right wing jersey. By the time the Six Nations rolls around, someone else will be injured, and it's good to have options. But when they're all fit, when we get to a World Cup in 2 years' time, it's depth and it's competition. Josh van der Fleer is watching Caelan Doris play well at 7. Caelan Prendergast has come into the mix. Timony was good at the weekend. You've now got players putting heat on the starting back row. I like established combinations. I understand established combinations. I understand the value of established combinations. I also think competition is vital for this team to go back to the level they were at, and the team has to evolve somewhat towards 2027. And I think by picking McCarthy, it puts the heat on Andrew Porter. He comes on, they win 3 scrum penalties. That's good competition. Thomas Clarkson comes on, does well. That puts heat on Finlay Bealham to perform. I don't think anyone's taking Tyke Furlong's shirt just yet, but the better Clarkson gets, the more chance you have to rotate during a World Cup. All of this stuff is positive steps towards a World Cup in 2 years' time that I was getting worried that he wasn't going to make, because it had been a bit of a middling year, and because he had a dual focus with the Lions, there was missed opportunities there. And we're playing catch up to South Africa in particular, and England are coming hot as well. France as well they've had a massive amount of rotation, but suddenly we're seeing a squad building and options and players like Hansen coming in. That's great for Hugo Keenan, because Keenan's going to be watching that going, I need to come back stronger than ever. And if it's Keenan, it's Keenan. If he's better than Hansen, brilliant.
Yeah.
It's not about personalities, it's just about. And also, there could be games where it should be Hansen, and there could be games where it's Keenan, depending. I'd probably prefer Keenan this Saturday, certainly against South Africa. But then again, Hansen might open up to play for them. So it's good. I think the options are building, and it's starting to get more positive.
And in the back row as well, like trying Caelan Doris at number 7, Van der Fleer, who appears to be fit for this weekend, will come in obviously with a point to prove now as well, because I
wouldn't say that's obvious.
No, I don't think.
I wouldn't say that's obvious for me.
So I mean, coming back into training.
Oh, sorry,
not the starting team. He'll be coming back to train, and he'll be keen to force Andy Farrell's hand.
Yeah, because I think if you think about South Africa and the challenge they pose, and it's just the sheer size. I think just for on that kind of selection, to me it seemed like a nice way to line up for the game, because you lose nothing on the poach with Doris, and you lose nothing on the tackle, but you gain an extra probably inch or two in height and the extra ball carrying ability. I think even though Van der Fleer has really worked on that part of his game and he's actually very effective, Doris is a different level in attack. Now obviously playing 7 probably reduces your impact level a little bit. You're not in those positions more naturally around the pitch as you would be in 6s when you're at 6 and 8, where you might stay in a short side, and you're if you're 6 and 8 gets to obviously rove a bit more and pick and choose maybe where you get involved. 7's a bit more. No, it does matter.
He's such a good carrier that I'm actually reluctant to lose that part of his game.
I'm not really. I like to have the option, I think. And I do think for the size, I think being adaptable it's going to be really important against South Africa, because South Africa, they have whatever we say about their strengths, and their strengths are their strengths. They're still going to be the same things. They've obviously opened up their game a little, but we can see what happens when they come under pressure. They're going back to mauls. They're going back to scrums. The key parts, their kicking's really effective. So you have to be able to combat that with them, and I think you have to be able to put your own imprint on the game and stamp your own authority on it, which Ireland actually think do better than most teams against them. But I do think you have to fight fire with fire sometimes, and I think having the extra option there with the extra little bit of weight, which I do think that Doris gives you, I think is a nice thing to have. It's a nice string to have to the bow.
Helps your line out too.
Yeah, well,
big time. Exactly.
What's your thoughts? And because obviously it's one that it's been mooted for a while, and I'm glad it was done in a kind of a big game against say Australia. And how did you think it went? And what do you think?
I thought it was decent. I don't think Jack Conan's up to speed yet, and I do think we're still seeing players get up to speed. And If they go Baird, Van der Fleer, Doris this weekend with Conan coming off the bench, or they go Baird, Doris, Conan, and Van der Fleer comes off the bench, I don't really see downside on either of those. I think you've got really good options coming off the bench. I think Doris will end up playing 7 at some stage in the game. I do think Timony's the one who's going to lose out. I think Prendergast will hold his position. Van der Fleer is the more natural 7, but I don't think he's been as good. Again, he's grown into the season. It's hard to judge these players so early in the season, but I don't think he was brilliant in Chicago, and I don't think it'd be any harm for him to have a 30-minute cameo off the bench rather than a starting role like that. The pace and also like Porter just being pissed off about missing out on selection might just light a fire under Van der Fleer to get another couple of percentage points. But at the same time, all he's done in the Irish shirt, I wouldn't begrudge him to start. Like I just think it's a live one.
He's a great guy for it. I feel like Josh, the way he kind of plays, it's kind of hard to describe the personality, but he's kind of a little bit fearless in some respects. Do you know that kind of way? He's like a one-speeder for me. Like he's always 100%, do you know? Yeah. And you don't always have the flashy big moments with him, but generally speaking, I think he'd be a good bench guy. I don't think he overthinks the game too much. I think he's a very level-headed guy and very passionate without kind of showing it too much outwardly, and delivers very consistently at a very high level. I think it's a nice thing to have on your bench, and he's super physical all the time. I don't think he knows another way, because not that he's undersized. He's certainly not undersized, but he's not a huge 7 for kind of what his game is, which is kind of an up-and-downy type player for me. And he obviously added some nice ball handling, but really he's an up-and-down. Like he's a great tackler, good on the deck, and he's actually turned into a very good carrier, and I think he could be very effective off the bench. And whoever you decide to bring on, whatever you do with that loose head slot, you're obviously one of our hookers. I mean, Kelleher was excellent on the weekend, but whoever you're bringing off, it looks like you've got firepower now, and Prendergast gives you that too.
The word that's in my head now a lot of it is options. Like I feel all of a sudden,
but isn't it funny how that conversation has changed so quickly?
It's so quick, because now all of a sudden I'm going through the team and I'm saying, okay, we have Paddy McCarthy going well, and Andrew Porter's an option. We obviously know the hookers are there. Tight head, Furlong, as you said, 100% established. If Joe McCarthy was fit, the second row would look a lot different. We've mentioned a few different back row combinations. The centres obviously is probably one area we're still would like to see a few more options to back.
They were really good in the weekend.
I was going to say,
guys are really
Robbie
good.
Henshaw, I thought had a really good game.
So did Bundy when he came on.
Robbie Henshaw,
I thought he was a few very physical moments.
Just to say on Henshaw for a second first, though, because he was the guy after that. Those 2 Leinster games in South Africa,
he looked a bit sluggy.
He looked very sluggish, and for a guy who didn't have the summer off, I thought he would look a bit sharper, or certainly he looked a bit leggy in those first 2 weeks, but he's really bounced back well, and I think he should start this weekend alongside Gary Ringrose, if that's the consideration. Given that, I didn't think Bundy was great. I
liked a few of his moments. I know he had a few errors, but I liked he just so physical. I just loved it. My lasting impression. So I watched the game again this morning, just so it was fresh in my mind, and my lasting impression was they were good. The 2 boys they felt physical. Everything that went down there felt physical. The carrying, for the second last try, Bundy's carry, it's just aggressive, and he was hard to move. He didn't get many poaches or like that, but he was in there and he was hard to shift, and he just made it difficult for Australia. And
so Ali kind of pushed him out.
That was a bad one in touch, but in fairness, it was lovely by Sue Lee. He keeps pushing him on the ground. He probably shouldn't. Probably has to release him when he's on the ground, but I'm being really harsh there, but I thought that I could see what he was trying to do. He's supposed to go for that edge because he was shown the edge there slightly. I actually felt, don't know who was outside him, but someone should have probably dropped underneath him actually, because once you saw him going there and you saw Suey Lee getting there, I was a winger. I was thinking, give him something out the back to drop it back in, keep it in play. But aside from that, I thought they were effective together. To be honest with you, and I always like Henshaw and Aki together.
And it's not like they're playing against. There's a lot of pace in the South African edge, but the South African centre pairing, if they go with the Iolande and Creel, that's you're matching up. That's physical against physical. That makes sense. I think what might hurt Aki is the not retreating penalty. That was a little bit. That's work rate. That's where Farrell's looking for non-negotiables.
It's off the kick.
And Ringrose is, although he has had his own kind of middling start to the season. Again, he's only just back again. He's growing into it.
A few bad ones
he was bad. He wasn't great in Chicago. So there is that, but also he's so important to the defensive system, and he does have that bit of extra speed if they do go wide. He is such a good defender. Normally, I know that one wasn't brilliant in terms of the defensive decision making. I would suspect they'll go with Henshaw and Ringrose, and I think they like Aki coming off the bench for 30 minutes. Aki hasn't played a lot of rugby either this year, so he's another one like this. Again, you're trying to measure these players against each other.
He's a big boy.
It's
Like,
tough.
it's harder for those kind of size guys. Like, I always class Lowe in that. Like, Lowe's always better when he's had 5 or 6 games under his belt, and he's kind of, you know, because it's just they're heavy set guys. You can see it in the legs. You know what I mean? So I always think a few more games they kind of get it. It just takes bigger guys a little bit longer sometimes, particularly those kind of power players. So yeah, no, it's an interesting dynamic in that. My natural feeling is that I always think Henshaw and Aki go quite well together, and I like the matchup there against South Africa. But yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have.
It's very disappointing for McCluskey to get an injury, like, you know, because I thought he was going well. Like, yeah, I thought he was really good in Chicago. Obviously, got the injury there, got another injury. He won't be playing this weekend. Yeah, I just feel like, wasn't that
like this in the Stockdale camp? Just you can't get just a good run of 20 games, you know, that kind of way, just where he just niggly in an Ireland jersey. Obviously, with Ulster, he's been. He
started against South Africa the last time they played in Dublin, remember, and he got like a stinger, I think, and had to come off. And again, like, he didn't get much luck that time either. But yeah, it's funny. I just wouldn't have thought I'd be like Henshaw after the start of the season. I thought, God, will he be back in the Ireland squad? Will he actually?
I think there's a lesson in it, isn't there? Where, like, I mean, we rush to judgment on these players sometimes far too early. And I'm not putting you in that bracket. Like, I mean, I always go back to with Robbie.
What was I meant to? I was going to say, what was I meant to say after those 2 matches?
No, but I'm just saying, in terms, and I'm not saying you.
Yeah,
like,
well, no, it wasn't. I didn't criticise him, so I'm happy to say I was wrong. Like,
I think Henshaw has almost maybe entered that. It was Rob Kearney for a while. Conor Murray then took over the mantle of the player everyone wanted out of the team. And I think Henshaw took over. And I do go back to that Six Nations moment where he was one-on-one with Miafu and didn't back himself to go on the outside. I just don't think he trusted his body at that point. But because he got injured, I think against Northampton, and missed out on the Lions, he's had a lovely summer off. He would have rather been a Lion, but he got a lovely summer off. I have a piece with him in tomorrow's paper. Like, he talks about how he's been able to fix up a few things, as they tend to do. He's 32. He's not 35 or 36. He's still he's got a lot of miles, but a break at this point of his career. He puts a lot into his body. He's supremely professional. I'm delighted to see him proving people wrong. Me, like, I doubted him as well. I'm in that camp of going, God, is Robbie's legs gone? And does he have to just play 12? And can he do it at this level? But suddenly he looks light on his feet, a bit top of the ground. That moment of collecting the cross kick to score the try at the end, that'll do his confidence the world of good. Like, sometimes you just need to remind yourself of how good you are, because he maybe was in a bit of a spiral, going, he didn't get picked for Chicago. I've lost my place to Stuart McCluskey. Like, that's bad for his confidence. But again, that's Farrell lighting a fire under someone and getting a response, and that's been a little bit. That's a positive of this window, and it's great to see it because he is contracted until the 2027 World Cup. So. And lads on central contracts tend to get picked, so Ireland kind of need him fit and firing, and they need that quartet of midfielders plus Osborne kind of really driving standards and lighting fires under each other.
Let's talk about out half then. Thought it was Sam Prendergast's best performance for Ireland. Like, I know there was defensive issues that I'm sure you I know what you're going to say about them, but just to pack that for a moment and just talk about some of the other elements of his game. Thought his tactical kicking was good. You know, had some good high kicks to put Australia's backfield under a lot of pressure. Some good offensive kicks as well. The crossfield kick for the disallowed try actually was like a perfectly weighted run right into Tommy O'Brien's hands. Obviously, a prior knock on had a call back.
That was a gorgeous kick.
Yeah, lovely kick. I just thought, like, he was like picking good options, especially as I mentioned earlier in that opening quarter, or the opening 15 minutes. Thought he was good in in the 22. Thought he picked good options there. So I thought he played quite well.
I would never comment on a played quite well without including the defensive part, Will.
Right, yeah,
so I have to cover that. I know, and this isn't like having a proper go. This is like, look, talk to a few ex-internationals as well after. Like, view is still probably same. Like, some of the tackling was just like, I think, inexcusable. And this is really going against the crowd. And I actually hate it. Like, he's a young kid. I hate having to do it, but I'm going to call it like I see it. I really don't like the defensive stuff. I don't like it. And I think everyone's getting caught up in it now. I think he really let the team, that one close to the line, he went backwards into that.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't, like, put your body on the line for your teammates. He missed. There was other ones I heard people calling out two miss. I was like, no, there was about 4 or 5 I saw that I was like, that's just a cold miss.
Even the tackle on O'Connor, I think, might have been a high tackle that they actually didn't know.
Well, I think so. He got so everyone's like, oh, he kind of ringed him there, but I was like, no, like O'Connor was actually had rolled out of it and he just dropped it halfway through, like he kind of skidded out of his hands. I actually thought he kind of rolled him quite well. It was decent. He went for a bit of a hit there, but his feet are too far away from that. Still, it's just poor technique. I don't love it. And I've had my negative bit now, and I'm going to turn to the attacking side of the ball, and because it is very important that we give a young guy his kudos for what he delivered there. I thought the team looked like they worked around him really well. He organised. You could see, I think he organises things really well. I loved the break. The break was a lovely touch down the short side. I think was that Harry? Was it Wilson? He
went inside Wilson and he handed off.
He handed off
the back rows. Maybe it was the second row.
I don't know. I know he handed one of the back rows. It was a lovely turn of pace, like really gorgeous little dummy, and the fend was gorgeous, and a beautiful pass to gather himself to pass that inside to Gibson Park. Lovely bit of skill. Thought the tactical kicking was really good. I thought the kicking into touch was excellent. The ball handling, you can see it's just crisper than Crowley's. He picks better options. He holds it a little bit longer and closer to the line and can still deliver. Whereas Crowley, his tendency, if he's uncertain, he'll carry more, which I don't love. I wish he just used up the options a bit. Sometimes a quarterback has to just use a guy. You know, for 0 meters, you just got to take, and someone's going to get clobbered. That's your job sometimes. And I just think I wish Crowley did that a bit more and conserve themselves, because I think he'd be able to guide the team around a little bit better. I thought Ireland really benefited from how poor Australia were in the backfield. Like, they cleaned them out in the air. They did that to New Zealand, but seemed to go away from the tactic a little bit and went kind of kicked longer. If you think about some of Crowley's kicking there, they kind of went long. They started kicking for 50-22s and things. Whereas when they went to the air against New Zealand, they actually had a lot of pay there as well. But they cleaned Australia out in the air. For a Joe Schmidt team, it was very unusual. And I thought that really helped the team, because whenever it got stodgy, they just put it up and got it back, and they got momentum into the 22. So he benefited from some really good kicking there, but also some great chasing and some poor stuff from Australia. But his attacking stuff was really good, and the team purred with him. And I'm not sure how much of that is an Australia thing as an Irish thing. I'm going to say it's probably 50-50. I think the Ireland definitely had better shape. Their rucking was better. They caught more balls. The forwards delivered better. So if they had some tip-ons to each other, which was when Ireland are playing, that's when they're doing. When they're playing good attacking rugby, the rucking and the passing amongst the forwards are the key bits for me, because it keeps everyone honest and opens up spaces for them outside. So loads of good stuff. But the same issues, I would never pick.
Yeah. So I was going to make the question. So, like, if you're doing the pros and cons, this even if there's a school of thought that the team functions better with Prendergast playing it at half
in attack,
yeah. But like, even that, are you saying that you don't think the positives of that outweigh the negatives of?
No, he's a bench player for me until he sorts that out.
But he can still be exposed off the bench. Like, would you say come back, get him out of the 23 and come back when you're ready to
No, I'm not saying that. No,
because the last minute of the game is as important as the first. So if you're on for 20 minutes, you're going to get.
I'd rather have my chase. I'd rather have he gives you an ability to open up the pitch and chase the game better. So I'm and I don't really think you need to be bringing your 10 off if he's playing well. Like, Jack Crowley's super fit. He's clearly, for me, and he was excellent when he came on, guys. I mean, he didn't get much kudos, but he was really good, and he showed some nice flair, that lovely little back pass as well. And he kicked nicely. He looked settled over the kicks, a bit more settled over the kicks this week, I thought, as well, from the deck. I don't love that you lose a little bit in the kicking out of hand with Crowley. I think he just doesn't have the same length as him, and he doesn't have the same kind of, I think, even he had one nice crossfield kick, but he popped it up in the air. Whereas I think if you look at Prendergast, once he's zipping them across, there was just a little bit of that going on with him. I just don't think he's as good kicking as him, and you lose a little bit in the ball handling certainly, but defensively just not even close.
It's interesting because, like, it has been a huge talking point. Like, everyone is acknowledging that he played well. Those kicks that we mentioned generally played well, but everyone is also saying what Luke was saying. Like, I don't think that's gone under the radar at all. So I'm fascinated to see how it develops this week in terms of selection, because like Andy Farrell is like Mr. Defence, like, so it is a funny, and like that's what's been so disappointing, is that like this was well flagged coming at the end of last season and he didn't go on the Lions tour, so you would have thought there would have been lots of time to knuckle down and get a bit of a handle on this if it can be done.
I believe he was told that was why he didn't go.
Well,
so it's disappointing to see it's not fixed.
Yeah, and his international coach is Andy Farrell, his club coach is Jacques Navers. You've got two of the leading defence coaches in the world who are working with you on a daily basis, not a daily basis, but pretty much every day of your working life you've a world-class defence coach. Plus you've got Sean O'Brien, whose designated title is contact skills coach at Leinster. who I would presume is working with him one-on-one. I haven't got a chance to talk to Sean in a while on the record about it, but it'll definitely be like top of the list the next time he does media, because I want to know what he's doing with Sam to improve him. But like, I asked Andy Farrell on Thursday after the team announcement, where does he think Sam is at with Sam Prendergast is at with his defence, and he said it's a work in progress. He didn't want to get into it. He gave two very short answers in response to the questions. When we asked him about the out halves after the game, he talked more about Harry Byrne than anyone else.
Because I heard you guys say that on the pod on Saturday, and it just made me laugh. But I also wanted more details. Like, what was the actual, like, how did Harry Byrne come into it at all?
I think he was asked something like
Frawley too.
Yeah, Frawley too. Sorry, but he was asked because I think that was the best the two of them have played in a match day 23, and I think the question was, they've made your life difficult this week in terms of selection, and he said, yeah, but we also have Harry Byrne, who played really well in Spain, and we're keeping an eye on Harry, and Harry's going to have a big part to play in this if he keeps going the way he's going, which I think was a message to Sam Prendergast that your Leinster jersey is not safe. It was a message to Crowley as well, that you got to keep going, because I think there's stuff that they don't love about Crowley in terms of going off script and some of the mistakes that were there in the New Zealand game. Neither of them are perfect, but they're both confident. I think it's the first time they've both been confident and on top of their game. I think we saw all the reasons they're excited about Sam Prendergast on Saturday. All of the reasons that they're trying to promote him and get him in there, because they think that the stuff that he gives them in terms of his kicking range, in terms of his passing range, in terms of his decision making, in terms of his ability to whip the team into shape around them and keep that shape for longer, that was all there. But it was let down by his tackling one-on-one, and I don't see how Farrell backs that up. Like, I think he'd love to pick Sam Prendergast this Saturday, and he may well do it. He wants to pick him, but if you got Jasper Visa, Evan Etzebeth, Sia Khaleesi, I could name the whole 15.
Keep going.
Keep going. He's in trouble against all of them. Yeah. Whereas with Crowley, you sleep easy. And like, what's it going to come down to against South Africa? It's going to come down to winning those collisions.
Tight margins. Like, if this game, if we win this game, it's a one scorer. Like, they could put a score on us. I'm not sure we could put a score on them. Yeah. And if we win, it'll be tight. It's always tight if we win against them. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just they're such a good team.
And there's no hiding place. No. I think in the old days you could hide it out half to a degree.
People allowed for it. They were like, well, he's your 10. That's they just don't tackle. That was the thing. That is not a thing anymore. That is not, like, what's so disappointing is he's so good. And I can see he has moments where he's got that, like, aggression and he's got the competitiveness. You can see them pumping the arms. But I'm like, pumping the arms? Why don't you pump an arm into someone's ribs? Like, just do something for your teammates. You know, it's a bad. And his dad's like an army ranger or something, brother, and like animals. Like, I just don't get it. It's not computing with me at the moment, and I just don't like it. I really, I always put myself, when I'm judging a player, I always think, what would, like, in a team I was in, what did you want to be thought of in the change room? Like, did you, like, how do you walk in on Monday? How do you walk in on Monday? Like, is he walking in buzzing, going, I played unbelievable there? Or does he go, fuck, like, God, I hope if they show the defensive clips here, like, it's going to be so embarrassing.
Do you think when you watch him, do you think it's his attitude or his technique or both?
God, this is like the one question I don't want to answer, because I have a really strong view on it, but I'm hoping it's technique.
You have answered it.
I'm hoping it's technique. Put it that way. That's the gentlest way I can answer that.
Certainly his feet are not right.
No, and he's a tall guy, so it's really important, you know. And I always wonder then, like, if someone like Shawnee teaching you, because Shawnee's such a big, strong guy, like I always think those guys, sometimes their technique doesn't have to be brilliant. Whereas I always wonder, like, some of the really good guys I got taught by defensively, they were kind of backs or rugby league guys, but they were small guys. So your technique, if you're a small guy, your technique has to be brilliant. And most of those people will talk to you about feet and where are your feet. And then really, if your feet are right and you can distribute the power, all it is about getting yourself into the space as close as possible and driving the feet. That's what it is. You know, particularly if you're a smaller person. Whereas if you're a bigger guy, I always hear them, it's a great chop tackle, but their feet could be miles away from the tackle, but they're big enough to get the guy down. This is hard to describe in a podcast looking at a microphone, but if you're a smaller person, look at Faf de Klerk.
Yeah.
Look at Dupont tackling. Look at Tiny, like those guys. Look at Cheslin Colby as well. Tommy O'Brien's pretty decent. He gets himself like close to the contact to really drive through. But if you're a smaller guy, it's the really only way to dominate consistently is to be able to keep the feet alive and drive through and be as close as possible when you're delivering the hit. But I look at his hand, his inside hands are wrong. I look at the angles he's coming in. I'm wondering, like, is he thinking about what foot? Like, if I'm looking at someone, I'm thinking, okay, get the angle, and then all I'm thinking about is what shoulder am I having this hit on? And that's the foot. That's the foot that should be close to contact. And if that's close and the rest of my position is good, it's just a matter of getting in, like blocking a fend or something like that. And you should always nearly make the tackle. And he looks like he's in good positions to make them, which really that's the annoying part to me. Like the one down the touchline was horrendous. And the one close to the line, like he's actually in a good position. It's like he gets the contact and tries to sit. International rugby players are not going to be sitting. That guy he was tackling was probably 105, 110 kilos. And his whole game is running into people. Like, he's not going to be, if he's not doing that, he's not getting picked for Australia. So you better be ready when you're coming into a collision with that guy to be having a fight, and for the fight not to be over in the first hit. The fight's going to continue on. And remember, if you as a defender can hold your ground and keep alive, oftentimes if you're stopping the offload, you'll get help. So that's another thing he needs to consider. And you look great because double tackles look great. But the problem is he seems to think that the fight's going to be over quickly in some of the ones he's in a good position for. And that's just not the case. You know, so sorry, I've gone on for a bit on it, but I'm passionate about that part of the game. And I often wonder about guys teaching. Like for me, Nienaber is probably brilliant. He has a system and he's teaching everyone the system. But if you look at, say for example, so you hear me talking about ring rows a lot. I often wonder how much time they spend working on the actual technique of the tackles, because you can see, like ring rows, there's a guy. It's for me, it's sometimes just a technique thing because he's coming so hard. But I do wonder about the technique thing. It does really annoy me when I see bad technique, because our thing in Ireland, like we're never going to be. The system's really important, but we have to be so good at the technique as well. Because we're not as big as the other teams. So if your technique is good, you can allow for those things and find yourself in better positions more consistently. And I just wonder, are we training that in?
Like two of his teammates in Leinster are like two of the best tacklers in the game, and like Will Connors is one of the best chop tacklers in the game. Josh van der Fleer has been like, he's immaculate with his tackling, like, you know, with his technique in terms of the way he brings players down. They both cited their work with Hugh Hogan, Sean O'Brien's predecessor, who's coaching Belleville at the moment, as far as I know. But even just peer-to-peer learning, like, you do not go to the best tackler in the squad and you say, come here, I'm not getting this right. Your brother, who's a brilliant defender, who's a professional rugby player, like, surely he's going and being inquisitive and asking the people around him. Johnny Sexton's his coach. I'm not saying Johnny had immaculate technique, but
Johnny
loved
was always close to contact.
But he also he loved it. Like, he loved it. He never, all that stuff that you're talking about, like when I talk to former pros about him, they say, look, he doesn't love it, and it's hard to learn to love it. It's not something you can learn. You can learn technique, but you can't learn attitude, and you can't learn that kind of drive to that want, that will.
We're not in his head.
You're making a nice point.
We're also not in his head, so I'm wary of us saying, oh, he doesn't love this or love that. Like, we're respecting.
No, my point. Sorry, I made the point earlier on. You can see how competitive he is. Like, you know, you can see he's pumped for the game. But like, that's a real important part of the game. Just to touch on your point, so even all the people you mentioned there, right? They're all back rowers. So even Will Connors is a chop guy, but have you seen Connor? Connor's a big guy, like,
yeah.
And they're not the guys I'd be going to. If I was trying to sort this problem, if I was him, I'd ring up Gordon Darcy, or I'd ring up Brian O'Driscoll. Brian O'Driscoll would definitely spend half an hour, and whatever you wanted with him, he'd spend with him. Watch those guys. They had proper technique. They're small guys who punched above their weight for years. Think of some of the guys they came up against, and they managed them unbelievably well. Like, you see the jobs they did in Basta Road. They would have played against Tuilagi when he was in his pomp at Leicester. They managed all these guys just fine at the top level, and they're about 90 kilos, the pair of them, wringing wet. And that's because their technique was perfect. And I always think, if I was him, that would be the advice I'd give. Give Dricko a ring. Get Johnny to to truck you up to Dricko's house and talk through for half an hour with some video, because he's still so involved in the game and he's still on top of it. But he'd tell you about the technique and what you need to do to get this thing right. I wouldn't be going to my brother who's 6'5", or to Will Connors who's 6'5". I'd be saying, well, what about the lad who's 5'10"? He lives in Milltown, like 5 minutes away in the car. Probably one of the best defenders nearly of all time I've ever seen. I haven't seen many guys better than Dricko. Yeah, probably one of the best. And no one talks about it because of all the flashy stuff, but he was the best defender I ever saw.
Just to round off in the tens road, Like, do you think is it a prescribed selection that Ireland are following? Like, I think I heard you say that there was a notion that it was meant to be Crowley, Prendergast, Crowley this weekend, or like, did what happen at the weekend? Or, like, did Prendergast play his way in or whatever? Like, are they following like a rote?
That's out there. I don't know how true it is,
Yeah.
but it's something I'd heard on the around the place. I presume it was open as well to Prendergast changing minds. They must be tempted by a lot of the shape stuff, the kick stuff, the length or height that he's getting on some of those contestable. The length for the 50-22s or the one that Jorgensen knocks on before the second try. The height that he's getting on some of the contestables that's allowing Hansen to get in underneath it. The strategic decisions he's making were really sharp. He looked confident. They both look really confident. But I think he has Crowley for his kicking game. The pinpoint accuracy of his touch finders for 5-metre drives, which are going to be really important. Like, if Ireland need to be so ruthless at the weekend if they're going to win this game, because they're not going to get a team that gives them, that throws away all their line-out ball and drops every high ball that's kicked in behind, the way Australia did, or drops every attack broke down. Not every attack, but nearly every attack broke down with James O'Connor passing to someone who hadn't trained with for 2 weeks. I mean, there was so much wrong with Australia's performance that, while I'm not going to take away from what Ireland did, South Africa are going to be on another planet this week in terms of what they deliver. So Ireland can't rely on those things. So they've got to be pinpoint accurate. So if they get a chance to kick. So all of that plays into Prendergast's favour selection-wise this week. What doesn't play into it is what Luke's talking about. And we know that Jack Crowley is better in that area, and we know that South Africa are the most physical team in the world and will punish any weakness, and they'll go after him. And that's where the decision, that's what Andy Farrell has to weigh up this week. And
when you hear Luke's point, it's hard to unhear them,
Yeah.
Like when you hear someone outline the defensive stuff with in that kind of manner, it's hard to
I always just maybe I just think about the game too simply. For me, it's always 50-50 in how I judge a player and how I judge a match and how I think a match is going to go. And I think, well, okay, so in attack, how are you going to go? That's 50% of the game. In defence, against a good team, and South Africa probably have more ball, but maybe not. That's 50% of the game as well. How are we going to survive, and how easy is it to get to that person? 10 is an easy slot to get to. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's literally one pass play and you can really isolate someone. Do you know that kind of way? It's literally, okay, short runner, someone at the back, your winger at the back, you go, oh, well, I can't just look after Sam.
If he's touching the ball, is he touching the ball in attack far more than the amount of tackles he has to make in a game? He is.
Yeah, no.
So then, it's not 50-50 weighting.
Well,
I get your point in the broad scheme of things.
But it's not a touch by touch. So it's not a touch by touch because you have to judge it by how much better. Like, it's a net difference between what Crowley gives you for each pass.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's how are other, and the things with Prendergast that we probably I think the kicking factor is probably could be the decider this weekend. If I'm being honest with you, I think because that is such a huge part of the game, and we saw how key it was for Ireland. He's definitely a better kicker, I think, from what I can see. Off the deck, it's probably still up for a little bit for debate, but he's clearly got better length and definitely out of hand. I think the other issue is kind of the intangible pieces. Well, and I think it's probably answered by the coaches, but does the team shape itself better off Prendergast? And it feels like that's right. Now, that could be completely just that's a feel that I have, not a good, and we don't know if that's because Australia are crap or because it's down to Prendergast. We don't know that. I don't think we know that for sure, but we can probably sense it, and we probably get an idea from the coach's box in terms of, I think our gut feel. I think everyone's gut feel is that he wants to be able to pick Prendergast, but he's making it really difficult for him with the defensive stuff.
Yeah, they kicked the ball 45 times on Saturday. I can't imagine there's many times in the modern era that Ireland have kicked the ball that much. And they got, I think, 1,145 metres for it. And that's partly down to, like, Gibson Park his kicking was exceptional. James Lowe gets great distance off his kicks as well. I think Lowe put up a contestable that Mack Hansen
Hansen's a good kicker too.
Hansen's a good kicker. So they had good options. But I do think that even Tommy O'Brien's kick in behind that led to one of the tries was phenomenal as well. But I do think he does edge that area. But like Crowley's not going to let you down. It's not like you're losing an awful lot in terms of what if you go with him. So I do think Crowley's body of work this season has earned him the right to start this game. And the message, if the message from the Lions didn't get through, maybe the message for this one gets through. It's like, I can't trust you against this team. But like, he's going to be on for, like, he is taking one of them off with 20 minutes to go in each game. So it'll be telling if he leaves Prendergast off. But if he's on for 20 minutes, South Africans will still know. he's coming and we'll find ways to get at him. So he's going to have to find a way to make those tackles stick, and it's harder to do against that opposition than anyone else in the world. Maybe France aside, because France have some big ball carriers.
Yeah,
but he struggled in that game.
You want them both playing well at the same time. Like you said earlier, you think it's the best they've both maybe played in one game. The closest was maybe that England game at the top start of the Six Nations. It was like Prendergast played around 60, maybe just under. Crowley got to 20 minutes and played really well, and then he was never seen again in the Six Nations campaign. Really, like, and
he's in the end, but yeah.
What?
Crowley was in at the end
until the very end, yeah. But there was 3 matches played between those, and he
kept coming on and
Yeah.
fullback.
Played fullback for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Stuff, yeah.
He never played 10 again until the tournament was basically over. That was my point. So no, hopefully we can get them both, as you say, playing well at the same time. Just before we look to the end of the show, like, how close are Ireland to South Africa, do you think? Like, from what we've seen from South Africa this year has been fascinating and scary in equal measure. Like, you know, what they did to France, what they did in Wellington. Now they've also lost 2 games. You know, one of them was against Australia, where they were like 22-0 up, and actually looked unbelievable in the first 20 minutes, and then Australia had that huge comeback. That was kind of a strange game. Like, South Africa were about to run in a try and through an intercept to go the other way. So actually, they're probably not as far away as the final score, and that one suggested. They also lost at Eden Park, as everyone pretty much has in the professional era. But it does feel that they've taken a step away from even France and look the team to beat. And that's why I'm so interested this Saturday. All the positive things we said earlier about options and stuff like that. How does that stack up to what we've seen from the Springboks? It looks a formidable test, but I don't know. Something tells me that we're not as far away as I maybe thought initially.
Like, I think it's right now, it's the ultimate challenge in the test arena. They challenge you in every, like the All Blacks, like they are they've got to the level, I think, of that 2011 to 2015 All Blacks team, and they look like when they get things right, they're pretty much unbeatable because they have so many different facets to the game. But we said that about that team as well. And in 2013, they were right at their pomp, and Luke's team almost took them down at that day. So, like, no team in the game is unbeatable. Like, so Ireland can produce a performance, I have no doubt, that can go close to winning this game, if not take a scalp. They're at home. There's no, like, you can build up an aura or mystique around any team, but I don't think Ireland feel that way against South Africa. I think they kind of feel like they have their number to some degree. Whether that's based in reality or not, we'll find out on Saturday. Right now, definitely, like, Ireland are third best team in the world in the rankings. It feels like they're probably their ranking is being supported by their past performances, and their current form doesn't quite match up. That I think England have gone past them this window. New Zealand, I actually think Ireland are possibly right there beside New Zealand. It's hard to tell, but South Africa are right out in front. France will come back. France have had France. These windows are hard for France to gauge, but I don't think they're unbeatable, but I do think if they turn up and they perform, it's going to be very hard for Ireland to beat them, especially because the line-out fixes they got last Saturday, how real are they? Because Australia were so bad. Like, South Africa are going to be putting up some the best second rows in the world against them. Their back row, their bench.
Who's available? Is there?
Well, they're missing Mustard and Diego.
Yeah.
As it stands,
Yeah,
they're both potentially they both might potentially get off. But they have Etzebeth. They have Snyman.
Okay.
They have Ruan Noche, who's a very good lock, and they have John Klein.
Well, Klein is a different story, but the other, those, if it's Snyman and Etzebeth,
and Norch is very good as well. Like, he's in that kind of mould of Mustard, and any other country he'd probably have 50 caps. So,
a serious player.
Yeah.
Right, him. Yeah.
And you were out with the Springboks today. Like, what's the mood?
Well, like, for the team that are like the most dominant team in the game and have this great, this transformative effect on their country, they have an incredible chip on their shoulder. Now, they've had 2 red cards in a row. They've lumped that in with the bans that John Hendrik Vessels picked up for the offence against Josh Murphy in the Connacht game, plus Mack Hansen and Pimpy got a ban. And they have constructed a narrative in their own head that basically they're being treated harshly by World Rugby, who are based obviously in Dublin, that there's an global conspiracy.
Yeah.
No, but like, I'm taking it to another level. But Zwanzide Stick, the assistant coach, was up today, and he was asked, "Do you feel you're not getting fairness?" And he said, "Are we getting fairness? I don't think so, or it doesn't look that way to me." So they're leaning into the narrative that the world is against them. This is what Rassie does so well. Like, they've got every advantage going for them in the world, apart from the fact that their currency is very weak and they can't keep their players at home. But they've turned that into an advantage because they've so many players coming in. Like, they've every advantage, but they paint themselves as the outsiders, as the plucky underdogs against a country of 8 million people, I suppose, if you factor in the whole island, that has very few rugby players.
Which island is 8 million?
Ireland. They think we're the big bad wolf, whereas and they're going up against some sort of Irish-led global cabal. Whatever gets you through, it's whatever gets you up for a game. Like, how do you keep going when you've won 2 World Cups?
He does. He's great at creating.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Like whatever, and it's whatever we talk about, and we I've had a good few goes at some of the selections. Part of me also admires, like, if they make a mistake, they're so, and it's why I think the Prendergast thing, I'll be so worried against South Africa, because they're so tactically adaptable. Like, if they make a mistake with the selections, it's boom, gone. Like the prop makes his first cap, and they pull him off after 30 minutes, not working out. So like, boom, gone. Like, it's just, they're ruthless with it, and he seems to be able to keep everyone happy, but also keep everyone on the edge, as you say, with they're kind of thinking that the world is against them, and they've got this little bubble that they all operate within, that they all love coming in there. They all play their best rugby in there, and I do think they're also the best coaches. Whatever about the selection thing, I kind of put that in a different category. Like, I put these guys in the same category as the Joe Schmidts in terms of coaching ability. I just think they're so technical. They're thinking about new ways all the way to, like, all the time, to get an edge or to be creative or to work to their strengths. Like, I obviously thought it was crazy to leave the scrum thing up because it's open to a referee's interpretation against France. Remember, after 22, it's like, that's mad. But you hear them talking about it, they're like, ring up the referee during the week. What about this? And then they went and did a bit more research and go, do you know what? Let's do this against them. We watched their pack just standing around for a bit. Let's get them moving a bit. They're just so willing to take a shot. They're on the edge of the coaching. Their technique is so good for big men. And I just love how adaptable they've been, and how they just pick away at your weaknesses and play to their strengths when they really need to. I love everything about them.
It's a big game for them, like, it's in the sense that, like, they've won everything in the game. But the only thing missing from the CV in this era is a win in Dublin. Now, they've only played one game there. It's not as if, like, Ireland have beaten them loads of times. So I think they really want this one.
And they're very clued in, partly because of the URC and the fact that we're all playing against each other all the time. And also because Erasmus lived here for a year and coached Munster, but they're so clued into the Irish media. Like, they're playing clips from off the ball.
This right now.
Hate these guys, not me.
I think it was last week's show that, like, we spoke briefly about their game against France, and I said, which I stand by, that, like, Feinberg and Gomazulu missed a couple of straightforward kicks. There was like 50 comments being like, those kicks weren't straightforward, you prick. It's like, it's like,
but that's the passion, and they bring that to the pitch.
It's great. Like,
it's an online army. Like, I wrote about it today. It's got the 16 man that they have of this kind of, like, any decision goes against them, suddenly, like, there's GIFs, there's memes. It's just like, and it's an onslaught. You just have to leave X for the day because it's not worth it. But, like, the referees are aware of that, and, like, they're in their DMs, and it's like it's a fortunate, like, because we talked about Troy Parrott at the start. That's the team that matters the most to the Irish people at the end of the day. Whereas the Springboks in South Africa are that team, and it matters so much to 40 odd million people. Not all of them, obviously, but, like, so many people in that country. And that's because Erasmus has embraced change, and he's picking players of all sorts of backgrounds, and he's melded them into this one singular force that does unite people and bring people together. And it's so powerful, but it also has a dark side. And he's just so relentless. Like, all he wants to do is win for South Africa. But he's also open to bringing in ideas from outside, two of which are from. He's got 3 people from Ireland in his backroom team, and Paddy O'Sullivan's an analyst from Kerry, and then he has Jerry Flannery and Felix Jones, Tony Brown. So Nina Aber leaves, and South Africa was always a country that was quite like, this is our way, and we always do it this way. Erasmus, a quintessential South African, goes and gets 2 Irish coaches, and after the World Cup he brings in Tony Brown from New Zealand to work on the attack, and they start picking. I mean, he's obviously watching Feinberg and Gomazulu come through, and he's going, here's my Dan Carter, we're going to get Tony Brown coaching him. And they can go to Paris and win the Old Testament way, but they can also beat New Zealand away, scoring 6 tries, and they can play you both ways, and it's so impressive. But they have the players as well. I went to a schools game the last time I was over there, and it wasn't even a top level schools game, and the calibre of athlete and player that they had on show that day was frightening. It's nothing like the levels that they can go to, depth, how hard it is to get to be a Springbok in the first place. It's all working in their favour, and they've got a guy at the top who's running the show so well. It's like they can dominate this game for an awful long time. Whether these things always peter out in the end, but right now it feels like we're living in their era.
It's always been the place to go for a tour win. can you win it tonight? You hear Sean Fitzpatrick still talk about that team in '96. Ireland. I mean, I know we didn't win the thing, but we obviously, the Test match win down there. It's like a collector's item. And you'll have that forever.
In like their international team play a different hemisphere, they have a 12-month season. I know not all the guys play for the South African franchises, but they shouldn't be able to be as good at international level as they are, because they're being stretched across every month of the year. I remember I sent a tweet a while ago just going through that some of these guys have been playing literally for I think 18 of the last 19 months. There'd only been one complete month where some of the guys Etzebeth hadn't been on the go, and it's crazy.
A lot of I think the South African based players do get breaks built into their system, because the Sharks will often just lose their Springboks for a couple of weeks. But it's a fair point. But I think the benefit of that, they have the depth as well, that they don't have to pick. Etzebeth didn't play against Italy last week. They can still beat them with 14 men. They have so many players, and they've so many good players that they can probably afford it. And also they're young players coming through in they used to play Super Rugby when Super Rugby was the best tournament around. I'm not saying URC is the best tournament around, but their young players are playing against Irish players, Welsh players, Scottish players, Italian players, mixing and each other, mixing and matching styles. Then they go off and make some cash either in Japan or France. Maybe a few of them in Ireland.
For the local
Curry Cup, yeah.
There's a lot of young guys playing Curry Cup.
But they go off, make the cash, then they come back and kind of finish their career there, be managed again. But also when they go, another fella comes through and he gets to experience all of that. And they pick the players like Evan Roos at the Stormers or
Cameron Hanekom.
Both of those guys in any other country would be heading towards 50 caps, and they can't get near it. And Razzie has his own criteria, and he doesn't pick certain players. Neither of those guys have really managed to crack it. I know Hanekom's had injuries; they both probably have. But eventually, one or both of those will come through, and we'll be like, how have they not been picking this guy for years? But they're able to wait. And they're able to keep dangling carrots on guys.
Augustus, who's playing for Ulster, who was unreal for Northampton. I know he was called into the camp, I think, in the summer, but he hadn't played for them before that. They have the depth of outrageous depth. They've been so good for the URC as well. I know in terms of logistics, it maybe doesn't work, but in terms of rugby, it has been unbelievable. It's great, and it's great for us as well. Now, when you watch the Springboks, you have a familiarity of who's coming through. it gives you an appreciation.
But our young guys get to play down there, Will, as well. You think about the different climate they play in. You get to play on the high veld. Joburg is obviously way above sea level as well. I can't explain to you unless you played a game. Have you played any sports at altitude, at that level?
I don't think I've ever been to altitude. Let alone
some people
Patrick is probably about as good as it is.
Some people can't even sleep at that altitude. Playing a sport. I remember when we arrived in 2009, the Lions tour. Now I'd had a bit of a chest infection anyway, but I think everyone was pretty much similar. First training session, we did a half lap just to kind of warm up, and we're going to just before our stretch, so it's just literally just to warm up. I was out of breath. It really hits the body like a ton of bricks. The altitude. So we're having our young guys exposed to playing down there. I can't tell you how valuable that is for us too. So it's valuable for them, and to be honest, they need us as much as we need them, because the Super Rugby was I remember talking to who were the two brothers?
Duplessis.
The Duplessis brothers. And I remember they were saying that you have no idea how badly positioned South Africa is from a travel perspective for, it gets whacked both ways they go for Super Rugby matches. It was just really took a toll on the body. And they were I think the time zone thing, it makes a huge difference. It really, really does to your recovery. I think to your life at home and stuff as well. I think just because you're not coming in ratty, you're tired or whatever, and you're it's just, I think it's made a big difference for them, and financially as well. It works better for them too. So. I think that's worked for everyone.
Yeah, apart from New Zealand and Australia.
But
both
New Zealand really,
New Zealand are really struggling. That's one of the big. I watched the breakdown show this morning just to kind of get a sense of the reactions.
Oh God, jeez, I've seen a few. I've seen some of it as well. They are really not taking that defeat.
But they feel like they're in the doldrums. And I think one of the big things they look at is the fact that they've lost South Africa as a kind of a partner, and they only played them at international level. I need to bring it back to the question you asked me about Ireland. There's a really, really fascinating dynamic with Ireland this week. They're never outsiders at home. Even against France in the Six Nations, I think they walked into that stadium thinking we're gonna do these, this is gonna be our day, and they got an awful shock. So they've had a few setbacks. South Africa are 5-point favourites in the bookies. No one expects Ireland to win across the world. Everyone thinks South Africa are going to do this. And you're talking about Caelan Doris, you're talking about Dan Sheehan, you're talking about Andrew Porter type furlong, lads who have been at top of the world for the last 5-6 years. maybe not that long, 3 or 4 years, certainly since 2022.
Pretty close.
And you're saying to them that this crowd are much better than you. Like, I just want to see the response that they have and what that extra little edge and needle does to them, and whether Ireland can raise their levels back up to that and produce a performance that reminds us. Because Farrell was asked the other day, do you still think your team... It wasn't like, are you still a good team? But it was kind of like, did you ever lose faith that you were still in that top tier? He goes, no, I always thought we were a good team, and I always thought we'd come back. And he feels like he's kind of pulled it round. So this has always been the game of this window that was going to tell us where Ireland really are. They go and beat South Africa. Everyone's feeling very different about the Six Nations. Everyone's feeling very different about everything. Things get away from them the way it has to New Zealand and France. And there's no shame in that really, but it will feel like a very poor end to a window that was been middling. There's a lot riding on it, and I think the players will be listening and hearing and feeling all of this stuff, and I'm sure Farrell will be telling them everyone's writing you off the way he did for Byrne and Curry before the Lions. That motivation is there, and I'm fascinated to see whether it matters against South Africa. I don't know, but I think that's going to bring something out in them. I hope it is.
If we do what we're good at, we're a bit of a handful for South Africa. If you think about it traditionally, like New Zealand are the only team really consistently who kind of would have beaten South Africa. Now, not always, and away from home it's always a different kettle, but New Zealand traditionally have always given them trouble. And I think a lot of when Ireland are playing their best rugby, or have been playing their best rugby, a lot is very similar to how New Zealand were at the at the best. Very few handling errors, brilliant at the ruck, nuggety, good defensively, no weak defender, good in the air, good kicking, just really solid at all the fundamentals of the game. Like, that's the way you compete with South Africa. There's going to be times where they catch a good maul 5 metres out. It's like it's nearly impossible to stop them. Or there's a scrum and they get the weight in behind them and the technique perfect at the right time. They might blow you away. But if you're nuggety, if you're tough, if you deliver on the fundamentals, you can kind of hang around there. And I think that's why Ireland have caused them a little bit of trouble. And I think it's why New Zealand always give them a good fight, bar obviously the blowout. But even in that first half, remember, New Zealand actually, that was the few ones that didn't go their way. It could have been a different scoreline at half time. So I think Ireland and New Zealand consistently give them the most trouble. And I think it's when both of those teams play to kind of what their strengths are, which is not always having the biggest guys on the pitch, but having being the best technically and delivering the fundamentals. That's how you compete with South Africa.
France had them in the third quarter. They had them where they wanted them. They had loads of opportunities, and they kept. And it was against 14 men, and that would have been the reason it had France nailed those opportunities. You have to take your chances. Yeah. You can't let things slip against them because it's not necessarily going to come again. New Zealand beat them a week before Wellington. They're not they are not unbeatable. They are a brilliant team, but there are vulnerabilities. They're just very, very hard to find, and they do have an unbelievable bench coming on, and they just don't tire as a result. And the way he's picking this bench, and last week having only 2 front rows and then 2 second rows and 2 utility players, he's ahead of the curve. But it's you can get sucked into the idea that a team is invincible, and there's no such thing.
No, definitely not.
It's set to be an absolute cracker. Luke, Rudd, thanks so much for joining me. On Saturday, Rudd, Keane and Sinead will have a podcast in your feed looking back on what is set up to be an absolute cracking game, and then myself and Luke will be back next week to review it all. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and goodbye.